Welcome back to, finally, edition 66 of the Bebo Knows podcast. This is your host, Brian Bullock, and we're trying the video thing again. It's been about a month since I've done a podcast here, and probably be another 2 or 3 weeks for another one, but hopefully I'll get back into the routine of things back when wedding shit is over with. But enough about me here. I got a new-time guest on the podcast. He's here to help preview the NFL among
Pleasure to make all of your acquaintances.
Okay. And there's okay. I guess I had the YouTube video link up of my recording there, so that was why you heard my voice there twice. So I'm sorry to interrupt there, Seth.
No problem.
Byrne is on the podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Seth.
It's a pleasure to be here, Brian.
And like I said, he's going to help preview the NFL with his style of analysis, and we could go more into that later. But feel free to introduce yourself, as I do with every new guest. I have everyone introduce themselves from a betting perspective. You could choose to downplay the betting perspective if you would like, but since this is a betting podcast, I'd like to get a little bit of a background about how long you've been betting, sports you bet, any memorable sports betting moments, however you care to describe yourself as a bettor.
All right, sure, that's fine. I started betting on sports, I'd say most seriously, in 2004. It was originally a science experiment with me and a friend. We took $5,000 at the start of the 2004 NFL season. By the end of that season, we had run it up to a pretty steep amount, and so we decided to then do baseball. He was over at Columbia at the time. I was up in graduate school at Tufts at the time. I'd already gotten my CPA and gotten really bored of that. And so I was up at Tufts, and during baseball season, we doubled up from what we had done in football, and he decided, we should probably do this full time. And around that time, I was getting thrown out of school, and my phone just buzzed. Did you cut out? Are you still there?
Yeah. I just tagged you on a link there to promote this pod one last time. Sorry, this is a shit show already, but let's. I'll make that the last promotion here. So
no, you can promote as much as you want. Now I know what happened. But anyway, so at that point, I started betting on sports full time, and we did that for at least 7 years. At some point, my father's health issues forced me to take over his businesses. And so I've been doing that lately, which has taken up a lot of my time. But football is still one of my passions, so I've still been focusing on that every single year. And so that's a little idea of my background. My background in terms of analyzing sports is mathematics. I don't know if any of you have been to my blog, but I'll talk about NCAA basketball, which teams deserve to get into the NCAA tournament, which teams don't. And I like to break down things in terms of power ratings, see how good various teams are. Like I was watching the Ken Palms back when people still knew him as a weather guy. So I love math, I love sports, and betting flows naturally from that.
Okay, I actually didn't know Ken Palm did weather. I haven't really researched his background. Okay. Yeah, I guess there's some overlap in that a little bit.
There's some other guy who's also originally got into weather and got into sports, but I'm blanking on who it is right now. But yeah, Ken Palm is the major guy. So
okay, so since you've been doing this betting, have you done these write-ups every single year since?
So I started the write-ups even before I started betting. I started these write-ups back when I was in college, back in the 90s. I don't want to tell you exactly how far I went, but long enough ago. So yeah, I've always been interested in looking at all the teams, looking at how good the rosters are, and what their perspective is for the upcoming season. And that's been going on ever since. It's gotten more involved, more detailed. Once Football Outsiders started coming out with their almanac and giving us the new terminology, DVOA, DYAR, it really enabled people to understand how well various players had performed the previous season and give people a numerical baseline for just how good various teams were.
Okay. All right, so let's see here. So I guess you could describe some of the things that you've actually tracked in your blog, because your blogs aren't just limited to just betting, even though that's kind of the angle, like I said, of this particular podcast. But I know I saw when I was doing some reading of your recent blogs, I know you were doing a lot with the World Cup last year, and Thick Slicing's favorite person, Nate Silver, in the 538 blog. I know he's a big fan of Nate Silver. And also, you had tracked Aaron Schatz from Football Outsiders. So I don't know if you care to go into a little bit about that, or what made you decide to do some of that writing.
Oh, sure. So when people are giving out statistical projections that can be tracked via Kelly betting, which means that you know not only what they like, but how much they like it, how strongly they feel about it, then if they're particularly loud enough or perhaps obnoxious enough about their projections, I love to see how well those projections actually play out relative to the market.
That makes
Um,
sense.
a lot of people like to give themselves a pat on the back for doing well against some objective standards that isn't the market. Like people like to say how well they do picking NFL games and they just try to pick winners. But that doesn't really mean much if you're not doing it relative to the money line. Similarly, picks against the spread, for the most part, people go 50-50, or in Football's Outsiders case, a lot worse. And you get to see how smart the experts really are relative to the market.
Okay, and what was last year the first year that you tracked Schatz?
Last year was the first year it was possible to Kelly track them,
Okay.
because before then they simply told you which sides they liked, and they gave them, I think, green, yellow, and red, or green, orange, red, or something like that. But basically, they didn't actually give you an idea of how much they differed from the market. Last year, oh, my cat just ran by me chasing something. I'm outside right now watching him. She steals something.
I could hear the crickets, and
Yeah.
I was wondering if that was kind of a prelude to the amount of people actually listening to this pod right now. But
Well, I mean, that's a lot of crickets. So there's a lot of listeners right now. Very nice.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So last year was the first year we were able to actually know how much Football Outsiders projections differed from the market, and it was a lot, and it was eye-opening, which led to a great quote from Lou about the rocket car. I think it was the Gold House.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't know. It was in the DGen tweet of the year.
Exactly.
Like, wasn't it in the finals? I think. Did it win?
It did not win. There were last year was a very strong year. There were some really tough competitors.
I feel like this year is even better. There's been a lot of different stories this year, DGen wise.
Yes. And the year's not over yet. I mean, the weekly one is tracking all these.
Yeah, there's still a third of the year left, so quite a bit of time for people to make an ass of themselves here.
Exactly.
But
could be you or me.
So it'll. I don't know. I have been pretty quiet on Twitter lately, and I think some of those guys, you guys in Seville, I might tweet a little smarter, or I might watch what I say a little bit more, so I don't show my weaknesses, show my true self, you know? So.
Well, let's actually talk about this for a second. You just said how you're a little careful. You're more careful in terms of how you tweet about sports and sports betting because of Contrarianville. And that leads into the fact that the one thing that unites Contrarianville is an absolute hatred of bullshit and bullshitters, which is why they hate touts so much.
Yes.
Contrarianville almost exists to call out touts on their bullshit. And touts are basically selling snake oil. And there's actually a reason for this. People like the idea of having free money. They like the idea of, if I pay you for your picks, I'll get free money. It's like idiocracy. I like money. And these touts are telling them, I can beat a highly liquid market. All you have to do is pay me, and you'll do that. And there's also stock pickers. There's the stock market and other things. And it's very, very, very hard to beat highly liquid markets. That's just how highly liquid markets work. They're as smart as they can possibly be. They weed out the people who are wrong, and the people who are strong, people who are good at it, become stronger and stronger until the market respects them, and then the markets become that much tougher to beat. And so,
Sure.
yes, long story, and my cat's ran in the other direction. Good for her. But yes, it's touts are full of crap, and Sprague has his chart, and he's right about it. And this applies to almost anything where someone says they can beat a high liquid market, be it sports or be it anything else.
Sure, and I know there's that angle on that chart where if it's not a high liquid sport and it's going to be a low limit, and you're probably wasting your time anyways. At least trying to make a living out of it.
Yeah, if you're paying a tout for like advice in a low limit market, good luck with that. But I personally actually love low limit markets if it's from a solid book like, let's say hypothetically Pinnacle. If they're doing something that they don't normally do and they're posting lines in some random tournament, I love handicapping that stuff. If I can get some kind of record and try to compare leagues and try to solve a math problem that other people didn't put that much effort to, I don't care if it's only for $50 a pop. It's fun for me. That's what I like. I like doing math to solve problems.
Sure. And so I don't know have you dove into the DFS world even in the slightest or no?
Hate it with a passion. Hate it. I've always hated fantasy sports. I mean, I don't know how many of your viewers have seen the movie Untouchables, but if you have, or even if you haven't, just Google the Untouchables team speech. It's by Robert De Niro, and it's fantastic. It should be up there with Pacino's Inch speech. All about team.
And you've said you just detest fantasy sports in general. I believe. You're about the team.
Exactly right.
So the JETS and the I don't know, Rangers. I believe.
I root for the Jets. I root for the Rangers. I root for the Knicks. I root for the Mets. I root for the Syracuse Orange. They used to be known as the Orange Men, but then we got a little politically correct. And honestly, I don't care one way or the other about that one. But I actually root for teams. I also root for the Winnipeg Jets and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
All right. Yeah, that's a novel approach, rooting for a team, because I think you might be in the minority nowadays of somebody who roots just solely for their team and not for like some general managed team that you created out of thin air or based on a site.
Exactly. And some people have their loyalty change day to day from which teams they're betting on. And that's fine. A lot of people, it makes them very happy to do that.
Sure. And this probably, I already know the answer to this based on the fact that you've done this professionally, but I assume that you have no qualms about betting against your teams if the number's right.
I have tremendous qualms betting against my teams, even if the number is right. I will do that at gunpoint.
Okay. So do you hold? Because I've always had this thought, or at least in the past couple of years, where if I can't find myself never betting against my team, I can't bet for them. I don't know if there's logic behind that, but I feel like sometimes emotion.
Try to avoid games that involve my teams. There are times when you simply have no choice, when the market presents a view that's so different from yours that if you call yourself professional, you have to step in here. But I don't like to. I prefer to avoid it. And it doesn't come up that much in hockey because I don't bet that much in hockey or basketball, the NBA certainly. But for the Jets, oh yeah, I have to stop myself sometimes.
Yeah. Did you have the Geno Smith interception game at the end? I guess I have to be more specific. The Broncos game last year. Did you have the Jets in that game?
Almost certainly not. The only pain I can recall from that game is from the pain of actually rooting for the Jets.
Okay. So your standard normal Jet pain then.
Oh yeah. Like Geno Smith in the last game of the season actually had a great game. He had a 158.3 QB rating, which is the highest possible QB rating. I mean, QB rating isn't a particularly good way of looking at quarterbacks, but it does tell you, yeah, he played really well that game. And then I looked at the rest of the year, want to see if there's any hope, and no hope whatsoever. He's still just awful. So we didn't really lose anything when the linebacker broke his jaw. But this backup Fitzpatrick, he'll look great if he's got plenty of time in the pocket. If there's no one near him, he actually looks like a quality NFL quarterback, and he probably actually is quality NFL quarterback when he's protected. But if he has got to deal with someone in his line of sight, if he has to deal with someone rushing him, oh my God, is he bad? Just the numbers are unreal. And so at some point, I mean, the Jets have a decent offensive line. They've got a couple good offensive linemen, but there's going to be a pass rush during the game, and he's going to look awful, and he'll either turn into a turtle or he'll put up a really bad ball, and then we'll all have to hope and pray that it goes well for the Jets, and it probably won't. Okay.
Well, we can get into more of that as we move on here in the podcast. I guess I think we touched base on your writing, unless there's anything else about your writing that you care to touch base on before we go on here.
Well, I actually write about a lot of different things for different sites. I mean, there's a card game Magic the Gathering. I used to write about that. I write about like anime and music. I used to write about politics. I still write about mathematics and economics from time to time. Like, I enjoy writing. I write about the NFL once a year simply because I want to put out an NFL preview and I want to do the research, and that's an outlet for it. So yeah, that's and of course I'll write the blog for other stuff when I Kelly track stuff and just other thoughts from time to time. I'm going to try to keep the blog a little more active. Like, one of the things that we've talked about in Contrarianville is financial Twitter, talking about interest rates and other such things, because there's clearly a market for it. A lot of us care about this stuff, so that might happen more in the future. Okay.
So with the I forgot the exact question I was going to ask here as it relates to the blog here. If I remember, I'll
That's fine.
come back to it here. But what I was going to ask was, as far as your blog, are you one of the few that post your bets? Because I know here when I wrote in the outline about some people are weary of sharing their general knowledge about sports betting, because they don't want to give away their edge.
I have no problem sharing my knowledge. I have no worry that I'll affect the markets. I won't. The market respects almost no one, and I'm not on the very, very short list. So that's not an issue. I'm more concerned about the fact I don't like to promote betting. I generally, when people ask me my advice on betting, I tell them don't. Because for the most part, what people are simply doing is they're paying VIGs, and some of them will become addicted to the excitement of them. Some of them will start with a winning streak, which could be the worst thing that could possibly happen to them because they'll continue chasing that. And once the eventual reversion to the mean comes in, they start going broke, they'll remember how they started and they'll think they can recreate that. And it's just a recipe for disaster. So no, I'm pretty anti-sports betting. I'm pretty anti-betting in general, which is not to say it should be illegal. It should absolutely be legal, but I don't encourage it.
Okay. And we could go into more of the do's and don'ts here in a second. I guess actually is that where we're headed? No. The next thing I was going to ask is if there was any other writing projects for the upcoming NFL season, but I think you touched base on that. Are you going to be
tracking ESPN's FPI? They apparently are going to give out percentage win percents for each team in the game, which is something that I can track. I'm presuming Football Outsiders are going to keep the same format for last year until I hear otherwise, which means they can be tracked again. So I'll be doing both those things. So there's gonna be some football content in the blog during the year.
Okay. All right. So let's just go into the actual NFL season coming up. I guess maybe the outskirts of it first, and just get your overall approach to NFL. And I want to get a sense of an NFL season from.
Sorry, you cut out like 5 or 6 different times there. Can you just try that one again?
Get over. So as far as your overall approach to the NFL season, how do you prepare for the NFL season from a betting perspective? Is it do you consider it a long process? Do you not even look at it from a betting perspective?
So I don't even look at it from a betting perspective first. I want to know the objective truth. I want to know how good every team is. I want to know how good every player is. I want to know how deep the roster is. I want to know if your starting running back gets hurt, is that going to matter? Is it not going to matter? In most cases, by the way, it doesn't. Most running backs are fungible. But it may actually matter not so much for the running game, but for the passing game. Some guys can actually pick up a pass rusher in the backfield, some cannot. So that's the first thing I want to know. I want to know there was a book written about the Ravens a few years ago called Next Man Up, which talks about just how brutal an NFL season is and how guys go down. So I want to know, how good is your roster? How good is your depth? What happens if guys go down? And I once I have that information, I try to put together power ratings for the various teams.
Okay. So do you get the sense that the general public tends to overvalue injuries when betting?
I don't know if there's a general trend of overvaluing, undervaluing, or anything between. I've heard reasonable defenses of both points of view. I think, in at least my own personal point of view, is what's the marginal value? It's not how good is the guy getting hurt. It's how good is the guy getting hurt and how good is the guy coming in. What's the difference, the delta between the two of them? And I don't know how many people think about it, or at least how many people in the general public think about it. I think most of them try to think, all right, how good is the guy who's getting hurt? Does he matter? And if so, well, we're going to ding them. And in some cases, there's going to be a pretty good backup. In some cases, there won't.
Okay. All right. So you've mentioned how long you've been doing this. As you've gone along since you've started doing these write-ups and all that, what if you could describe some of the evolution in your analysis on how you've started evolving your analysis and your write-ups? Like, I know you said you just started analyzing. I just got a cat next to me now, Mr. Tenderbittle's here. You can't see him yet, but I lost my train of thought there. But last year you were doing offensive line, the value of offensive.
So
if you could describe. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Before last season, I started a project basically to judge offensive lines, and I continued into this year, and I haven't completed it because I'm still not sure how to gauge and evaluate run blocking. But in terms of pass protection, I want to know two things. How likely are you just to outright fail? An outright fail means you whiff, you just get beat, or you commit a holding penalty. I mean, those are the three basic ways an offensive lineman fails. The holding penalty doesn't matter so much because that means you just kill the play, but the other two will affect the quarterback play. And the second thing is, if you don't whiff, if you don't just outright fail, how much time can we generally expect from you? And you also need to have basically an idea of how good the rush is. You can create high fat battle and how long.
Cutting out there. See if I can get him back on. I can't hear you at the moment. Let me get him back on here. Give him another call here. This is why I probably don't do it live here. Let me end this particular call. This is a shit show. Just enjoy. All right. Let me give him another call back here because I lost him. Let's see if he rejoins the podcast here. I don't have any filler here, so I hope he answers. Otherwise, I think the 6 viewers that are watching right now are going to quickly go to 0 unless I do some spontaneous nudity here. Are you there, Seth? Have I lost you? I think I lost one person after I said spontaneous nudity there. Let's see. Let me give him another call. I think I have to call him back. Apologies on this. All right. Just sent him another call here.
What was the last thing you heard?
You were. I'm trying to figure out exactly where we left off when you were cutting out. You were talking about offensive lines,
All right, so I'm
and
going to start going over. I think I've actually
okay,
realized what happened. So apparently
okay,
I've got to stay within a certain amount of feet of my router. So
okay,
um, last year, so the project I began last year was to basically try to figure out who had the best offensive lines and how much does it matter. And I still haven't gotten very far in terms of run blocking because that's a little tricky. But for pass protection, I want to know two things. How much time on a play where you didn't just fail, where you didn't whiff or just get beat on the initial protection, will you give the quarterback? And also just how often will you avoid whiffing? How often will you avoid getting beat to begin with? So will you A, get the initial block, and B, how long can you hold it? And the two best offensive line in the NFL last season belonged to Green Bay and Dallas. And that was very instrumental in Tony Romo and Aaron Rodgers being the two best quarterbacks in the NFL last season, Rodgers being even better. Um, so that's one of the things I want to look for. I want to look for, can the offensive line be trusted to protect the quarterback? Now, Seattle's offensive line was bollocks. They were truly awful, and they may be even worse this season. So that's something to look for. That's their Achilles heel.
okay.
And Russell Wilson has done his best to deal with that, and the coaching staff did their best, and it worked to varying success. We'll see what they do about this year. Marshawn
Okay.
Lynch was actually so good that he didn't even care. His offensive line was not great in terms of run blocking, and he made it work anyway. So they're still a very,
Yeah,
very strong team.
yeah. Maybe that might even add to the lore of that his runs bring, the highlight reel runs that he has.
Yeah.
I didn't really, and without you even mentioning that, I guess I didn't pay much attention to Seattle's offensive line last year. I wouldn't have known that it was that bad, unless you just told me.
Yeah,
And I guess
it was very, very bad. And this year, again, it may in fact be even worse. They're trying out some new things. We'll see how it goes.
okay. So, anything that you see in the next year or two besides the stuff that you're doing with offensive lines that you could see that might need to yourself analyzing even deeper in the NFL?
Well, the next project I want to look at is cornerbacks and safeties in terms of what kind of area, and also linebackers and pass coverage, what amount of field they can patrol. The NFL has been much more aggressive in terms of calling pass interference, which means it's going to be less about your ability to just stick with the receiver, which often involves contact to draw a flag, and rather than cover an area. It makes man-to-man a little bit harder, makes zone a little bit better, a little bit marginally better, in that you'll incur fewer penalties. So I want to
Okay.
see how much area various players can cover, and try to build defensive ratings based on that.
Okay. All right. Anything else, like in the
I'm
recent
sure that's
past
very
that
interesting to
you've
the
done
audience.
that? Oh no, I mean, I hope that I consider my audience to be intelligent, and maybe I'm selling them too high. I hope not, guys. I hope not.
I'm sure they're
I
intelligent.
hope
It's a
you're.
matter of me saying this is what I'm going to work on. I mean, when I have that information, I'm not necessarily going to be sharing it, so I don't know how much they care
No.
about my projects today. I will mention,
Well,
however, the ratings in NFL preview. If I actually have ratings for that stuff, I'll tell you who I thought did well and who did poorly. I just
so
won't be sharing the power ratings generated from that information.
sure. So with the writing that we actually see, how much of that is, what percentage of what you actually know about the NFL versus what you're like keeping to yourself is actually on the blog?
So there's two things that I don't talk about that much for different reasons. The first is I don't share my internal power ratings because those are my bread and butter. That's how I plan to make
Sure.
money in the NFL.
Makes
And whether or
sense.
not the
That
market
makes sense.
respects that, I certainly want to. The second thing is there's just people don't really care. They don't want to necessarily know how good the backup offensive left guard is going to be. They don't necessarily want to know how good the fourth and fifth cornerback is going to be. So I could go into more detail in the NFL preview, but I try to hold myself to about 80 or so pages or a little bit more than that. Just because how much do people really want to read about this stuff, particularly on any team that isn't theirs. Like a lot of people, what they'll do is they're going to read about their favorite team and maybe the other teams in that division, and that'll be it.
Sure.
So
yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Unless you're just a complete degenerate and you just want to, you're just looking for somebody to spoon feed you a bet or something. But that's not what you're about, because you're saying don't bet, people. Don't bet.
Exactly.
Okay, so I think we covered anything new in your arsenal there. I think you kind of touched base on that. So you kind of touched base on this a little bit earlier, and I kind of teased this in the promotion of this podcast a few days ago about for somebody just starting to bet the NFL. Now, granted, if anybody's listening to this, I doubt this is probably somebody's first time betting the NFL, but there might be a handful of people that are. So for those that are maybe new to this or somewhat new to this, what do you consider some do's and don'ts for people that are just starting to do this?
So the main do is obviously look at Pinnacle's line shop as much as you can, and try to find a line that beats the median of Pinnacle's line. That's the biggest thing. You're finding value. You're trying to find weak lines. Now the problem is, I mentioned this in the little blog or the little WordPress document, is a lot of the books that you're going to find the weak lines, you're also going to have the problem getting paid. You're going to find a lot of soft books where if you win too much money, or even if you win any money, you'll find them unreceptive to your desires for withdrawal. So I'm again, don't bet. but if you're going to, here's the order of effects that I'd recommend. The first thing I want you to do is find a group of books that you consider reputable, that you'll trust, and create a spreadsheet where you're going to record the bets that you make in that spreadsheet in real time. No cheating, no saying I would have made this bet had I been on my computer 3 hours ago. In real time, the bets that you'd make, and once you have a statistically significant sample, see if you're doing well or not. That's going to determine whether or not you're profitable. And the odds are, if you're being honest, if you're not cheating, you're probably not. But if you're making money, if you're actually doing wellness and you're not cheating, then maybe it's time to look to actually sports betting for real money. That's what I recommend. Also, if you have a kind of methodology that can be hardwired, you can backtest for, and again, we're no longer dealing with real time, then set up a set of rules that you could follow or could have followed in the time, and see whether or not they'll made money in your out of sample testing. You've used certain years to create a theory, test them in other years. That's this. I guess it's testing 101, but that's again the other thing you can do.
Okay. Now, did you do that yourself before you started betting full time?
No.
You kind of just dove into it?
When I started betting back in 2004, believe it or not, and this is going to be embarrassing, I had not even heard of the Kelly criterion. So I was simply trying to find the sides that I felt were undervalued and betting them. And this was by the seat of my pants. This led to certain things that in hindsight were not particularly intelligent. And we may talk about those in another pod, but for right now, let me say that at various times I overbet Kelly and I got away with it.
Okay. So with your participation in Contrarianville, where do you see yourself in that group? I know you're on the left end of the line there. I guess
that measures how often you say fuck on Twitter, as far as I can tell.
Oh, is that okay? Well, that makes a lot of sense because I don't see you swearing that much.
I try not to. I try to be as polite as possible. I mean, I get into a lot of different discussions with people, not just from various parts of the surface, on just various different axes. Axi, on various different topics. And I want to try and be able to have a civil discussion with anyone who isn't full of shit. Anyone who's serious, anyone who's coming at an argument in good faith, I want to be able to engage them respectfully.
Well, that since you've joined Twitter, do you see that getting any better or worse as you've become more involved?
In terms of how polite people are on Twitter?
Yeah, civility and just overall quality of conversation, I guess.
I think actually Contrarianville has, and they're going to be very upset at me for saying this, I think they've become a lot nicer and I think they mellowed in their old age.
I don't know if, I think I need to bring Jay Peasy would say, but so
you cut out there, but I'm just going to use my imagination.
Oh yeah, no, I was saying just burn it all down. Okay, so I think you described your do's and don'ts there. So you want to just go right into the NFL stuff?
Sure.
Just go division. However we care to do this. I don't know if you have a preference on how you obviously don't need to read word for word on what your preview was. I mean, people could read your preview if they want, but
yeah, and I certainly hope they do, and if they do, I hope they enjoy it. But you actually talked about what bets I might make if I were betting futures, and for other reasons, I avoid futures simply because I don't want to tie up my money. But that doesn't mean I can't try and price them. So let me take a look. I'm looking at Pinnacle's current NFL lines,
okay.
And simply because Pinnacle goes in alphabetical order. All right, so we have the Arizona Cardinals, heavily biased under 8.5. Great coach. Oh my God, is that roster in trouble? You know what? Apparently, it's going to be hard to go over every team individually, but I'll look at teams and look at teams where I feel maybe, you know, I don't even want to use the word value here because I hate advocating wagering. Particularly hate wagering on overs in the NFL preseason simply because the under is negatively vigged collectively. If you just look at the prices on the unders and you add it all together, they estimate a little over 260 wins. So in theory, if you were to bet every under, you'd come out ahead. I haven't actually tested this, but in terms of your expected value would be positive. You wouldn't necessarily come out ahead simply because some unders might win by 6, like say the Tennessee Titans or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year, and then you might have a lot of teams go over by half win. But teams where I think there may be value betting on them, I think the Falcons are a little stronger than the market suspects, or at least the market seems to be pricing them. Feel the same way about the Ravens. Other such teams. The Cowboys, even though they just lost Skandrick, and now they're also going to have to face Brady in that, I think, week 4, week 5, the 4th game of the season, or at least New England's 4th game of the season. I am always bearish on the Broncos simply because I do not necessarily have a lot of faith in Manning's ability to stay healthy for an entire season.
Okay.
On the other hand, the teams that are generally have 10 or more wins, there's a lot of regression mean. There's 2 biases built into the NFL lines. There's 1 regression to the mean and 2 an over bias. So the toughest thing to do is bet the over on a bad team because you again are going against both biases. So if you have a lot of faith in, say, the Browns or Tennessee or Jacksonville, more power to you. Sorry, just grabbing a little sip of water there.
That's all right.
Honestly, you know what? Maybe I'd have to actually go through and price things because if I'm just giving you team totals, I am pulling these out of my ass.
Sure.
Without actually doing the math. And I actually have done the math, but I don't have that spreadsheet open right now, so I don't know how many wins I'm expecting. And also, I haven't adjusted for the fact that Brady's going to win. I was actually assuming that he was going to lose, which may have been optimistic as a Jets fan. What can you do?
Sure. So I'm assuming that that extra 4 games has to add like I don't know, and this is just me pulling a number out of my ass.
Between a half win and a whole win. It's
okay.
You won't go wrong if you're pricing it between that.
I was gonna say 1 because I still think that they could have put out a competent team. I don't know.
Well,
that's just me pulling.
One of the things is we don't actually know how good. How do you pronounce his name? Garofalo, or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
We haven't really seen enough of him to generate a good power rating. So there's a lot of variance in how good he could have been.
Yeah, I know that there was a lot of people after that Chiefs game last year that were wondering if they should start him in the next game and just kind of pull the plug on Brady, like it was just like he was done. I know.
If anyone seriously thought that, they were insane.
Well, I know, but like you probably don't.
And I remember the Chiefs game, by the way. I remember that Brady was not good in that game, but he was still Tom Brady. He still was their best shot of winning, and well, that actually bore out.
Yeah, and I mean, wasn't Gronk still hurt at that point a little bit?
That's the other thing. Giving Brady a weapon he can actually trust giving any quarterback a weapon he can trust will obviously help him, and he benefits more than most because he's going to be more able to take advantage. Let me talk about this for a second.
Sure, go for
I don't know how many of your readers are familiar with DVOA. But the way DVOA works is it analyzes how well you perform doing that type of play relative to the average NFL team or average NFL player in that play called. So one of the things DVOA team DVOA ratings undervalue is they undervalue teams that call more effective plays. So let's say you have 3rd and 8. One team calls a running play, one team calls a passing play. They both gain 9 yards. The 9-yard run is going to have a higher DVOA because there was a lower expected value for that play call than for the passing play. The Patriots are very, very good at choosing high-value play calls, better than almost any other team in the NFL. So DVOA and other such team down ratings, or at least DVOA, I don't know how to say, other team down ratings, will undervalue them. And if you have a weakness, if you have a Gronk and your defense can't necessarily stop Gronk, they will throw to him as many times as they can. If you can't stop the run, a la the Indianapolis Colts, they will call a great many running plays. If your team can stop the run, they may go an entire half without calling a running play. And that's something more NFL teams should learn from. If you cannot run the ball, don't try.
Sure, that makes sense. So do we want to touch base on division? We don't need to go through every team, but do you want to just go through each division and give your general thoughts?
Sure. Let me actually look at that spreadsheet I mentioned earlier, just to get a feel for. So let's see. We have the AFC East, where you have one good team, one okay team, one team with a good defense, and Tyrod Taylor quarterback. We'll see how that goes. And then you have the New York Jets.
Yeah, I think you answered Blind Camper's question about the Jets already, by the way.
The problem isn't that we're bad. The problem is that we're bad as far as the eye could see. We're going to be bad for a very long time because we have bad ownership. There's nothing that screws an NFL team more than bad ownership in the long run.
No, that's true.
The Washington Redskins can tell you all about that. So can the 49ers right now, by the way. They had a good roster, and their owners have been screwing it up ever since.
Yep.
So in the NFC North, you have the traditional 3 powers, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Baltimore. All of them are solid teams. Pittsburgh is going to have a lot of high-scoring games. They've got a good offense. Their defense is not so good. Someone asks, is Joe Flacco elite? Yes, Joe Flacco's elite, particularly on his good days. On his bad days, he's elite in the opposite direction. So, yes, he's definitely elite. But Baltimore, if I had to bet one NFL future to win the conference or to win the Super Bowl, that's the one I'd say has the most value. They were the second best team in the AFC last year, and they had the Patriots down and they let them off the hook. So, I think
think I had them like at 30 or 40-1 last year. I think I got it in season. I was a little
Yeah,
disappointed with that one.
that was a good price. It could have worked out. Had they played the Colts, I can assure you I'd have been on Baltimore. I even said that before that game that I was going to be on whoever won the Baltimore New England game, betting wise, versus whoever won the Colts Denver game. There was clearly two good teams in one game and two not so good teams in the other game, and that's how it played out in the AFC Championship game. So then talking about the Colts and the AFC South, the Colts are not nearly as good as their final record is going to be because their schedule is garbage. 6 games against Houston, Jacksonville, and Tennessee is a real competitive advantage. They also get their biggest competitor, the New England Patriots, at home during the regular season. I don't know if that'll be enough to get them to win, but it's as much of an edge as they could possibly hope for. Then you have the AFC West. Denver is good. They're not as good as they were previously, and the rest of the division isn't so bad. I'm not an Alex Smith fan, but the Chiefs, Andy Reid's a good coach. Despite all his wacky in-game decisions, he has his team ready to play. San Diego, I don't necessarily want to trust Philip Rivers or San Diego, but they have a real shot. If someone were to tell me that Denver did not win the division, San Diego would definitely be my pick. Then in the NFC East, Philadelphia has gone from being the second choice to being the betting favorite to win that division. Dallas was the original betting favorite. They've fallen back a bit. I'd still have to side with Dallas. I don't know how much I trust Bradford, A, to stay healthy, and B, to be able to play well when he's facing non-preseason defenses. You saw, or you may have seen, they played the Ravens in the preseason, and the Ravens, I think it was Terrell Suggs who hit Bradford low on a read option play. If they want to use the read option as a weapon, they are going to get Bradford killed. So they're going to have to dial back their offense, and we're going to see how well it performs. I mean, Chip Kelly was ahead of the game for a while. He got Foles to be one of the leaders in DVOA for the season 2 years ago. But, I mean, he knew what he had in Foles, so he got rid of him and he tried to get Bradford. And hopefully Bradford has a higher ceiling if you're an Eagles fan. I don't expect him to be able to play well for 16 games. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
I have a lot more faith in Roma.
I have Bradford in my first fantasy league that I drafted. I have him as a backup right now, so I'm hoping in fantasy. Obviously, you're looking for volume. You're not really too.
Actually, in fantasy, you might be looking for variance. You're looking for a player who might get hurt or might be awesome. And in Bradford, you've embraced the variance. He would be on the list of quarterbacks who could lead the NFL in touchdowns, yardage, or fantasy points. We'll call them fantasy points. He's someone who could lead the NFL in fantasy points. So good pick there, and let's stop talking about fantasy football.
No, I didn't really care to embrace that too much, anyways, knowing your distaste for it. But I had to do a little drop there. So one of my best friends who I work with in sports a lot, I'm a Jets fan. He's a Giants fan, and he asked me, and I don't have a good answer for them. Are the Giants really, really unlucky, or is there something wrong with the franchise that they always have so many injuries and such terrible injury luck? And I don't know how you can predict or how you can model someone blowing off one of his fingers on July 4th, but man, the Giants are fucked. They've had so many injuries, so many games lost. So I wish I could be more optimistic. I mean, they've got Eli Manning, who's got 2 Super Bowl rings, and they've got, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL, certainly my favorite, Odell Beckham Jr., and I don't know what else they have beyond that. And then you have the Washington Redskins, who are a soap opera. Yeah, and that goes back to the owner. Like, as long as he's owning the team, I don't see them ever sniffing anything consistent of a winner.
Yeah, they picked up RG3. They picked up his 5th-year option, and then they talked about cutting the trade. That is not the sign of a well-run franchise.
Yeah, no, that's doing it backwards. You're supposed to cut him and save money, or not necessarily save money, but you're not supposed to pick up his fucking option. That's all I know.
Exactly right. And Shanahan basically broke him. They ruined him in that game against Seattle in the playoffs years ago. And since then, I mean, sunk cost. Since then, he's been sunk cost, and they haven't been able to accept that.
Yeah, I was watching that game, by the way, in Vegas Sportsbook. We have to do a Vegas drop-in because we all know Vegas runs the sports betting industry. I was sitting in a Vegas.
I think Latvia.
Yeah. Bovada, Nevada.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. No, I was sitting in a sports book on my 30th birthday weekend that my girlfriend, now fiance, soon to be wife, organized.
Oh, by
for me.
the way, congratulations.
Thank you. And by the way, this will probably be the last pod. I think I might have mentioned before until I have have an actual missus here. So,
when's the date?
It's actually 2 weeks from tomorrow. So tomorrow, going to do some exciting stuff. She's getting her wedding dress altered or finished, close to finished. If it's finished, she's going to bring it home. So that's exciting stuff. Hi. I got to get my suspenders and I got to get my top and my tie. So we'll see if I have time for that tomorrow. It's a good, exciting day for opening college day football.
Well, good luck and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So on the less important matters here, I was saying, I was watching that in Vegas, and I don't even know where I was going with that, but we could just.
All right, let's talk about the NFC North then.
Yeah, we'll just forget about that part. Yeah, the NFC North's a good transition, so let's go for it.
So Green Bay had one of the most talented but thinnest offenses. They had two great wide receivers, a great quarterback, and actually they had a great offensive line. So that's actually not that big. So I hear Cat in the background. Hello, Cat.
Yeah, that's Mr. Tenderbiddles.
Hey, Tenderbiddles. So they're going to be in an interesting situation where they've got a highly drafted wide receiver, Davante Adams. He's going to be asked to become Mr. Jordy Nelson. And there's two schools of thought there. Three schools of thought. One school of thought.
Am I losing you again? I think I lost you.
I'm not part of that school, but it is possible. There are people putting up that theory. Theory two is that Davante Adams will be able to step in for Jordy Nelson and be able to pull off the job. I'm actually in school three of, oh dear, there goes the team that I was going to pick to win the Super Bowl. Now they won't. That's where I am with Green Bay.
Okay.
And Tittles, Mr. Vittles obviously agrees with me.
Yeah, no, he's not much of a Packers fan. I think he's more into the cat-based teams, the Lions, the Panthers.
And you guys in Chicago let him get away with that, given that you're all Bears fans? Good lord.
Yeah, I don't know. I always hate to explain this. I'm actually a 49ers fan, but when I grew up younger, my dad wasn't a big sports fan, so I liked the Joe Montana, Steve Young era, so I just kind of hitched to them. My fiance is more of a Bears fan, but I would say
you're a front runner, and she's a true Chicagoan. Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So take that for what it is. I'm a huge New England Patriots fan now too. So
I don't believe you.
I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So which of those theories with Green Bay do you believe the most?
I'm on number three. I think wide receivers matter, and I think Davante Adams will not be able to replace Jordy Nelson. I think that they're going to take a offensive hit, and that'll be enough to drop them behind Seattle.
Okay.
If Seattle gets the number one seed again, someone's going to have to go in Seattle and beat them, and that's not going to be easy. But we'll get to the NFC West in a bit.
Okay. So you still have Green Bay, I imagine, winning the division then?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm bullish on Minnesota in the long run. I love Teddy Bradford, but not yet. It's going to take a while. They have to build up the roster. And in a couple years, I think Minnesota's going to challenge Green Bay. I don't think they're there yet.
Okay.
And Detroit, the team that was challenging them last year, they lost their best player, Ndamukong Suh. He went over to Miami, who's going to help that defense a great deal. And their defense is going to take a huge hit, and they're going to try and make up the difference offensively. I'm not seeing it. I mean, Stafford is fine. He's a gunslinger. But I don't know if the offensive line, I don't know if the wide receivers, I just don't think they've got enough to get it done. And that leaves your Bears. And, well, how about you tell me about the Bears, or your wife's Bears? How about we get her on? She can tell me what she thinks of them for the season. Because I don't think much of them.
Yeah, what do you think about the Bears this year? Do you think anything? Yeah. No, she said she doesn't know. So I guess it's I put her on the spot there. She walked into the room and she wasn't ready to be on the podcast here, but we'll
tell her this was Seth's fault. It wasn't your fault, Brian.
Yeah. Yeah, this was Seth's fault, so we're just gonna blame him.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I haven't. Let's just put it this way: I haven't heard a single optimistic comment, even from people that I know are fans of this team. And I don't know. A lot of times when that happens, and this is maybe my version of Contrarianville, where I see somebody, where I see a group of fans like who suddenly do that, and their team like pulls, a surprise season out of their ass. I don't know. Do you see it? I don't know. I don't know.
Even when they were good, Cutler had his limitations, and they tried to get him a new choice. They tried to draft him a great wide receiver, and that didn't work out because he started. So, I mean, they had a vision, they had a dream, they had an idea of maybe he'd come in, maybe he'd be the new Randy Moss. I'm talking about the guy from West Virginia. Forgetting his first name, Mr. White. Whatever.
Pat White?
No.
No. Who are you talking about, West Virginia?
Yeah, the wide receiver.
Kevin White. No, okay, I'm sorry, Kevin White. Yeah.
Yeah. So he got hurt, and I mean, I don't want to say that killed the Bears' season because I still think they'd probably get their butts kicked. But without him, they lost their best hope for a miracle.
Okay. So. Yeah, I think that's a general consensus, and I know at my I don't know if the book that I use, the main book that I use, shades lines towards or against Chicago teams, but I have seen the Chicago over/under go from 7 to 6.5 for what it's worth. So
yeah, it's probably closer to 6 at this point. I hesitate to ask. What's your book?
Oh, this is through my local. It's
well, all right. You know what? Then don't say anything else. You've already given away far too much information.
Yeah. No, I know. And my limits are really low. I don't.
That's perfect.
At this point, with the wedding coming around, I can't really afford to. I'm only betting what I could afford. So
yeah,
that's the best way to put it.
Understood.
I'm not shy about that, but I'll leave it at that. So we could go to our next. We could go to our next division.
The NFC South is a team with a division without any particularly good teams. I mean, last year their division winner went 7-8-1. That would be your Carolina Panthers. I don't see things as getting much better this year. The Saints still have Drew Brees, which means they still have a quality quarterback, but the rest of the roster has been gutted. Like, if you looked at what was last year, they've lost Jimmy Graham. They lost a few other defenders. I really think that the Saints should have tried a way to trade Breeze for a whole bunch of picks, if possible, if they could have done with the cap and just rebuild for the future. Because right now, they have a quarterback and no team surrounding him. And that's just a shitty place to be. The Falcons have Matt Ryan, who's still pretty good, but with the Julio Jones trade, they gave up a lot of draft picks, which meant the rest of the roster would get thinned out. They wouldn't have a lot of depth, and they're just starting to come out of that. I think they're going to be the best team in the division this year. We'll find out. Last year, they had a home game, Week 17, against Carolina for the division, and they got destroyed, I think, 34-3. So we'll see if they're better this year. Carolina, they have their own issue. The entire division has problems. And then you have Tampa Bay, where they have a whole new quarterback. And by the way, we haven't got into this. I would have gone for Mariota. I think Jameis Winston is eventually going to implode, but he does have more overall talent than Mariota. He's a smart guy. He loves football. He's got a lot of pluses, but he's an idiot. Same way, say, Dick Nixon was an idiot, and eventually it'll bring you down. So
to break off on a little tangent, do you look at personalities? Do you look at stuff like that?
I look at, in terms of quarterback, it's very hard to quantify leadership. It's hard to quantify intangibles. But in the case of someone like that, just for the long term, is this someone that's likely to have? Is this someone who's likely to enter the Tyson zone? Is it possible? If this person, I read about this person in a nightclub at 4:30 a.m. with 15 guns, like, would I believe the story? Yeah, I'd believe that story. I'd believe him, like, shoplifting, I don't know, some DVDs or something like that, and just because he did that with some crab legs. So it's a question of judgment. And off on another tangent, I hate the NCAA. I hate the fact that he couldn't get paid in college. I like it when these guys get paid on the table. I like the fact that Cam was getting money on the side when he was at Auburn. So, like, I feel for him. I think he got screwed, but a lot of bad decisions. And that doesn't even get into the sexual assault thing off the field. So, yeah, I'd be concerned if I were Tampa Bay. I think that there's at least a higher possibility of something going wrong.
Okay.
And in terms of on the field, both of them actually have a lot of upside. If nothing goes wrong, we could end up with two really good quarterbacks with Winston and Mariota. They both have a lot of NFL potential. After them,
okay.
I didn't particularly like anyone in the draft. I think Hundley, the guy from UCLA, was the one I felt who had the most potential. But him, I think he had potential as a backup in my mind, not as a starter.
Okay. And then one more division here, I think, unless you got more on the
NFC West, where Arizona pressed Seattle last season. They had one quarterback who played really, really well. That was Carson Palmer. Then he got hurt. And then you had Drew Stanton, who played pretty well. He got kind of lucky, actually, but whatever. It doesn't matter. He still played pretty well. And then he got hurt. And then they had, oh, God, I'm blanking on his name. Someone who was really, really bad at football, but still good enough to play in the NFL as a third stringer. Is it Ryan Lindley? Was that his name?
That sounds right.
In any event, whoever they had was just awful. And Arizona turned out to, if you looked at the DVO at the end of the season, they were in the bottom third. They were in like the 20s somewhere. They were not a very good team. Maybe bottom of the middle third. But in any event, they were not a very good team. And so even with Carson Palmer healthy, he's 36 years old, and their defense got gutted this offseason. So I don't think they challenge Seattle. San Francisco's offseason is considered legendary at this point. If you've ever seen that press conference their new coach, Jim Tomsula, gave after he was a newly hired coach, it was unbelievably bad.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Back when the Giants won their first Super Bowl in '86, they had maybe the thinnest playbook in the NFL. I think they had 16 offensive plays, and I don't remember how many defensive plays they had, but it wasn't all that many. Their defense was very, I don't want to say read and react. It was Belichick who was coaching them. They were very good at having a few formations, then adapting from that. The offense wouldn't necessarily know what was coming, but they weren't trying to outsmart you or outscheme you. They'd basically have a few plans, and they'd execute them, and they would out-execute you, and they'd just beat you.
Okay.
The general manager, George Young, he created what was called the planet theory. There's only a certain number of guys in the planet who are capable of stopping the run and rushing the quarterback on the defensive line, and so the Giants tried to corner the mark on those. They had Banks, they had LT, a few other great players, and they had a very straightforward defense. Putting that to the 49ers, Jim Tomsula, he's not necessarily going to try and outsmart you, but he knows football. He will have the 49ers prepared to play I think they're underrated. Like, will he give a good interview? No. I think his halftime interviews are going to be utter disasters.
They're going
But
to be minus EV. They're going to be minus
yeah,
expected
they're
value.
exactly. But in terms of actually teaching his players and preparing them to make plays, getting his players in the right position and teaching them things they need to know, he's actually a pretty good football coach. There may be more skills required to be a head coach. He may have to do the Peter principle. He may have been promoted beyond where he's naturally comfortable, and maybe that'll be a problem. But for now, I think the 49ers have a solid football coach running the team, and I think that their demise has been overrated. Now, talent-wise, they have less talent on the roster than they've had previously. They've had a lot of retirements. I'm not going to try and figure out why, but they did, and so that's going to hurt them. But I think you talk about the market overreacting. I think the market may have overreacted to a very bad interview. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, and I don't know if it's because of just the fan angle of things. I do think that if I was going to toss around that word value on the over, I think in my book it was at 6.5 at plus like 115.
I mean,
or
I think once you count the vig, you may be down to 6. I mean, it's certainly biased on the under, but I think on a week-to-week basis, and it pisses me off that the 49ers are playing Minnesota the first week, because those are two teams that I feel may possibly be underrated by the market. So, well, shit. I mean, where does that put me? It's like the NCAA tournament, where two teams that are really undervalued, well, the committee puts them against each other and puts two teams that you think are pretty much garbage. Well, they're going to face each other. And
this is like the VCU versus Butler game, something like that in round one.
Such bullcrap. But in any event, this one, Minnesota versus San Francisco, just random luck. So, but their team, I'm gonna look at to see whether or not their lines match up with my power ratings as the season goes along.
Okay.
And last but not least, not least, the St. Louis Rams. I almost called them the Cardinals for a second. Still do that. The Rams, they just traded for Foles, which means they've got to break in a new quarterback, have him learn their system. They drafted a wide receiver, I think Tevin Austin a few years ago, and he didn't really work out. They drafted an offensive lineman, Pace, the second pick overall last year. Not Pace. God, I'm dating myself. I'm trying to remember the name of the guy who was drafted second overall last year. He was an offensive lineman. He was a guard for the Rams. He's now being moved to left.
No. I'm thinking of the defensive side. No.
Exactly.
Okay.
Let's not worry about it. But in any event, they drafted an offensive lineman second last year. He was just terrible. Just utter disaster. Now he's going to be, I think, the new left tackle. So the Rams are going to have a few issues to work through. And if there's a team that may be slightly overrated by the market, they may be one of them, particularly early in the season. Their offensive line is still new, trying to figure out how to work together. And again, they've got Foles, who Chip Kelly decided, you know what?
I know you do a lot of draft analysis. Did you agree with them going running back in the first round there?
No.
I wouldn't think so.
Like, one of the things I wrote was, would I be happy if the Rangers won the Stanley Cup, but the Jets drafted Gurley with the 6th overall pick? And I decided that, flags fly forever, and it'd be awesome if the Rangers won the Stanley Cup. But, man, that would still be dumb with the Jets. And it turned out the Jets actually got the player I thought was the best overall player in the draft, Williams out of USC, and so I was really, really happy about that. And Todd Gurley ended up going 10th to the Rams. And no, I would not have done that if I were them. If I were them, I would have drafted the cornerback Trey Wayans or drafted a defensive tackle. This was actually a pretty good draft for defensive lineman.
Okay. So going. Sorry to go on another tangent here, but the draft angle of things. Do you keep your ear to the ground when it comes to college, or do you kind of wait for the offseason?
I actually do follow college a bit, but the NFL draft doesn't actually matter all that much for the upcoming season because rookies, they're rookies. Some guys, a select few can provide a lot of value. Like there was the defensive, actually for the Rams, the defensive tackle, the rookie of the year. he was really good. The Jets had a few good defensive linemen, so sometimes a guy can step in. But rookie cornerbacks usually get their asses kicked. Rookie quarterbacks, they have to take their lumps. A rookie wide receiver can sometimes have a huge impact. Randy Moss certainly did, and there have been others. So, like Amari Cooper is going to make a difference for the Raiders. He's really really good.
Okay.
He's been putting up some awesome stuff in preseason. Actually, another rookie wide receiver is going to matter. Lockett from the third round for the Seahawks. As I wrote in my draft preview, I really hope he ended up in New York, and he ended up out in Seattle. So good for them. And he's been also great this preseason as well.
Okay. All right, and I think you touched base on all the teams. One thing I meant to stop you on, we were talking about the AFC West. I want to go back to that and Peyton Manning. And
Sure.
I know that towards the end of last year, they started focusing more on the run, and C.J. Anderson had breakouts.
So he had some leg injuries. So once he had, I think, it might have been a psychic contusion, it might have been something else, but he had a lot of leg injuries, which meant he had to throw without a lot of lower body strength. And at this point, his arm really isn't up for that. And so there was some bad results. Defenses started creeping in and sitting on the short passing game. And honestly, the Colts did the same thing to him as Seattle did in the Super Bowl. They're basically saying, if you're going to throw deep, you can have single coverage. Otherwise, we're going to sit on everything short. And unlike in the Super Bowl, this time he decided, you know what, I will try to beat you with mid-range or longer passes. And his arm just wasn't up for it. He took the bait. He took what Indianapolis was giving him, and he simply wasn't physically capable of taking it. So
do you see them? Do you see him overcoming this? Like, I know obviously when you age, things regress.
Yeah.
Do you see?
Week one, they're one of the stronger teams. He's still healthy. I mean, he's older, but I mean, right now he's as healthy as he'll probably be all season. And so Denver is stronger now than I expect them to be week 17, and certainly stronger now than I expect them to be in the playoffs. Because he's an old guy after a whole season's worth of wear and tear. I mean, everyone's hurt. Everyone's hurt.
Yeah.
If you ever read Next Man Up or any of the other books that talk about this season, all these guys are hurting during the season.
Yeah.
Everyone plays with pain. So, and that just gets a lot harder when you're older. That's one of the reasons why, I mean, you've seen a lot of older quarterbacks play well longer in the NFL, and that's partly because the NFL has done such a good job of protecting quarterbacks. But that can only do so much.
Sure. Okay, so you still see them winning the division, but probably fading in the playoffs.
Well, let me put it this way. I expect them to win the division. They're more likely than anyone else. But would I wager on them to win the division at market prices? No, I would not.
Okay, fair enough. Was there any other team, anything else you wanted to reach back on before we kind of run through some of these last-minute things here?
So people were asking questions about how I handicap, how I wager. So the short Cliff Notes version. First, figure out how you want to develop your own internal power ratings, or how you want to bet. Even if you might not even want internal power ratings. You might not even care. You might simply try to make money betting on the NFL line shopping. And if that's what you want to do, you just want to find places that are weak against Pinnacle or relative to any other metric, go right ahead. The important thing is you bet up a rigorous scientific statistical testing process. You don't cheat. You don't say, I would have had this. Or, you know what, I bet this, but if I were really betting, I would have done this. You give yourself the lines that exist at the times, at sportsbooks that you would reasonably trust to pay you, and see whether or not you're going to make money over the long haul. And so this brings us to, wasn't on the outline, but the CH Ballers. You're familiar with them?
Yes, of course.
So they won, I think it's called the Superbook contest. And do you happen to remember the guy, the DFS514, I think is his Twitter handle?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't.
There's the guy who won 2 years ago. And
yeah. Okay. I know who you're talking about. I don't know his handle, but yeah, I know I know this what you're
So,
about to say.
for anyone listening to the pod, let me tell you guys a story of two Superbook winners. The guy 2 years ago, after he won, his advice was, and this is when he knew he was going to have the largest audience he's ever going to have, don't pay touts. His advice was, look, betting on sports is hard. There's a lot of variance in my favor. I hope at my best to hit 52, 53%, maybe. And I got lucky and I won the Super Contest. Don't buy picks from touts. The guys who won most recently, CH Ballers, what they did was they've been advertising their win percentage or their pick percentage from last year. And they've been saying, well, buy our package. I think it's like $500, $600, $700, whatever it is, to buy their picks. They went full tout. And they're basically using a small sample where there was a large number of entries. Someone was bound to win. Statistically speaking, someone would hit 55 or higher percentage, and they happen to be the lucky ones who did. And they're taking this chance to sell picks that they know that if they had real value, they'd be wagering. They'd be betting them. If you have a 50%, if you're going to hit 50% of your picks, you will make a large sum of money over the season betting them, particularly over the long run. Whereas if you're simply, you got lucky, you got lucky, you might as well sell your picks for, again, $500, $600, $7 pop to various people who want free money. So don't pay for picks. DFS good, Chicago ball, CH Ballers bad. That's my short version of that.
There you go. And I know that I think Vegas Watch is trying, and maybe I shouldn't advertise this, that he was going to try and take the CH Ballers name for a pick contest name. I'm not sure if that would get past the.
I think he ended up going with a president's ticket of Trump, Philly Godfather, but I'm not positive.
Okay. I thought he might have been trying to enter a second one.
I don't know about that.
Okay. I don't know if he was successful in that or not. No, maybe I shouldn't be advertising that. I might get Walker Pup after me after announcing that one. But okay. So I think is there anything else that we missed here that you wanted to talk about?
Check Twitter for any questions that.
Oh yeah, let's go for that are some questions. I think Scoot was asking about how do you do your offensive line ratings. Obviously, I don't think you could.
All right, so offensive line, again, I don't really have good things for run blocking, but I want to basically look at what percentage of your blocks do you just not make? What percentage of your blocks do you whiff on? Or does the guy overpower you in a very, very short amount of time, like the bull rush or whatever? And otherwise, if you hold your initial block, then how long will you be able to hold it until the guy is able to either get a hurry, a hit, or even a sack on your quarterback? That's what I'm looking for an offensive lineman. How long can I trust you? So that basically requires film. You can just, if you have someone watch the game, they can just go check by check, blocked, okay, 2 seconds, whatever else. And the all 22 film is actually perfect for that. That's what you should use to see how offensive line and how effective they are.
And do you find yourself watching games during the week of like replays of the all 22?
Yeah, I will try to generally watch 10 to 11 of the games during the week. If it's a good week, I'll watch all 16. It depends how much time I have.
Okay, so you're one. So I could definitely put you in the category of a person who finds tremendous value in actually watching the games.
Yes.
Okay. Because I know some people might just go off of maybe certain stats or just
and that's fine. I mean, those are the people. I don't know if you say philosophy, but they're in Plato's cave, and those stats are the shadows they are watching to try and analyze the real world.
Okay. No, and I'm always, that's always a question I ask people if they find value in watching games, because I do think that there could be cases made for and against, because I know that sometimes our eyes deceive us if you don't know what you're watching for.
Yeah,
Um,
that's certainly true. I mean, if you're watching a team that's on a hot streak that they're playing well, and you believe that that's their true power, true rating, you're gonna have a bad time.
sure. Okay, let's go into the necessary paper asked for all your inputs into modeling NFL games. Thanks in advance.
Okay,
Uh,
so for quarterbacks, I'm going to have a few different ratings. One is arm strength.
okay.
That matters in terms of if a defense is going to leave guys open, but for a short period of time, if guys, um, if a defense has a lot of coverage or catch up speed, a guy who's a touch passer is going to have a more difficult time than versus perhaps a different type of defense where guys simply just going to break open. I mean, this stuff's complicated. It'd be a lot easier if I could show you on film or like just showing you an image of a field where I had one of those like teleprompters. But arm strength, accuracy. So you have a guy like Flacco. He's got a gun. He's got a cannon. So if he sees a guy who's a chance to get open, you are not going to have a good chance of getting there before the ball does. And also, he's going to test you deep, which leads to a lot of pass interference penalties.
Yeah, I know Torrey Smith was good for that last year.
Exactly. And then you have evasion. And evasion could become, well, can I run away? You're going to have Kaepernick or Russell Wilson. Or it can be evasion, the ability to step up in the pocket, or just be a guy like Roethlisberger and say, oh, you hit me. So, and then throw the ball and complete a pass. And so there's a lot of different forms of it. And a guy like Roethlisberger doesn't get nearly as many roughing the passer penalties as he should, simply because, well, you were able to get the ball away anyway. Well, he still roughed me. I mean, he still hit me in the helmet or did whatever else. No flag. Fuck you. You're Roethlisberger.
Yeah, it's kind of like Shaq in his heyday. Probably got fouled way more than
Exactly. Hacked all the time. But how are you going to officiate that? So
yeah.
for a quarterback, I want to look at how you can handle a rush, what kind of power your passing have, and how accurate you are. And this will play out with defenses in different ways. It also plays out basically in your receivers. A guy like Randy Moss will turn a guy with Randall Cunningham, someone who's got a strong arm, isn't necessarily the most accurate at this point, but he can get the ball to you, and he's smart. He's going to, intelligence, not making dumb mistakes. And that's where a guy like Kirk Cousins, who looks good for a lot of the game, and then he'll make a really dumb pass, then watch him goes, oh, that's why he was on the bench. So that's the kind of stuff you see in film. But in any event, that's how I analyze quarterbacks' offensive lines. Again, how much time they're going to give. I wish I had better stuff for running games, but for now, I basically look at how well has the running game done so far this season against the defenses they faced. And then for wide receivers, I'm still working on it. I don't necessarily have stuff I trust beyond the VOA, DER. But just the general feeling, is this guy getting open? Is he playing well? Is he good? How are his hands? Some guys can get open and it doesn't matter. There's a guy for the Jets, Hill, who was very fast. He was actually not bad at getting up once they taught him how to run routes. When he came to the NFL, he didn't know how to run a route or how to catch. They taught him how to run a route. He never learned how to catch, and that was it. So, and then for running backs, there's evasion. For running backs, actually, the one thing I want to know as running back is, can you block a guy who gets through the line? Can you pass protect? Because that's what running backs mostly have to do in the NFL. If they can run the ball, that's great. But can you be a good 6th or 7th offensive lineman, depending on whether or not there's a tight end back? So that's what I look at for the offense.
Okay.
Defenses, now, if you're a 3-4 defense, your defensive line will often just be asked to hold the line. You're going to look for a pass rush from your outside linebackers. Some cases you can get it from the defensive line. If you're a 4-3 line, the 2 outside linebackers, can they rush the passer? The tackles, can they hold the position? Can they stop the run? A lot of this is basically, can you control your space in the field, or can you break through the space? Like, for a defensive lineman, their job is basically not be moved. For a defensive end or an outside linebacker, their job is to get somewhere. And so how good are they at that role? Also, sort of case of outside linebackers, can you cover a wide receiver, a tight end or a running back in the flat, or sometimes up the seams? So basically how well can you do your job? That's the short answer. For different linebacking cores, it'll be how much of the field are you going to be asked to cover. A really good linebacker might be able to cover a great amount of the field, which will make his safeties and cornerbacks look better if you can cover a lot of area and leave them to have less overall responsibility. Cornerbacks can have different jobs. They can be asked to do coverage on both sides of the field, coverage just on one side of the field. Like some teams will flop cornerbacks. They'll put their number one cornerback on the number one receiver. Other teams do it by halves. And other teams play a lot of zone, and they'll play a lot of nickel, a lot of dime. So basically you have to know, or at least have a feeling of how well a cornerback can handle the job that his team is going to ask him to do. And you'll find some cornerbacks that were great fits on the previous team, signed a huge free agent contract. Oh dear, this looks like a bad fit. I'm not sure what the general manager or the coach is thinking. Maybe this will work out. Ooh, no, it doesn't seem to be working out. And in cases like that, you may occasionally find a betting opportunity. So that's one thing to look for. Players who were really good players, good big free agent pickups, not a good fit.
And the one person I could think of off the top of my head is the guy that Eagles picked up years ago.
Asamoah. Yeah. He was perfect fit for where he was before in Oakland. The Eagles were playing a different system, a different scheme. He played to his weaknesses, not to his strengths. Also, that team was not necessarily well. I mean, that was a super team that was not well constructed.
Yeah.
Now work out often.
Yeah. No, that seemed like the perfect contrarianville. Like, hey, I think the under's probably some value here, like just based on all the hype that went behind.
I'm trying to think. The Redskins, the Dolphins, and the Seahawks, I think, and the Chiefs maybe, were four teams in my lifetime had created a super team in the offseason, were really highly valued, and to a team they shit the bed.
Yeah. Okay. One other question I think we had here was there was one I forgot to include that involved the Shatz lines being so different. I think.
Someone asked about. I'll get to Shatz in a second. One other thing, by the way, I look at, and I did not cover this in my NFL preview. Coaches matter in the NFL. Like people complain about various coaching decisions in Major League Baseball where they use relievers, their best relievers in low leverage save situations, and use their worst relievers in high leverage situations. And they're right to complain. That's dumb. But coaching in the NFL matters tremendously more. And there's a lot of ways a coach can be bad in the NFL. One of them is simply not preparing his team tactically or strategically, just not having his team ready to counter what the other team's going to do. Another way is simply punting on 4th and inches from the 45-yard line. Don't do that. Go for it.
NFL bot, NFL
yeah.
4th down bot. That's a must. That's a good follow.
So, for the most part, that's not what matters. What matters is how well you prepare your team, how well you enable your various coaches, your offensive coordinator, your defensive coordinator, and their positional coaches to do their jobs. That's the main thing a coach has to do. And a coach like Andy Reid and a coach like Bruce Arians out in Arizona, they are masters of doing that. They have their teams prepared week in, week out. It's a cliche, but it's true. And then there's other coaches that are just total buffoons. Mike Singletary, he was the best example of a coach who yelled and screamed and he said, be a man and play hard, but he didn't actually teach. He didn't prepare. He didn't scheme. He didn't adapt to the weaknesses and he didn't correct them. When there's things that were going wrong that were potentially fixable, he didn't fix them. he yelled at people to play better or play harder or whatever else. And that was just moronic. That's just dumb. Um, so a lot of coaches get in over their head. And it's possible the same thing will be with Jim Tom Sula, but that's not what I've been seeing from him so far.
Okay.
But Bill Belichick, really, really good coach. Carroll out in Seattle, very good coach. Of course, it helps if you've got good personnel and a good quarterback. Both those coaches failed at other places previously, but yes, those are coaches who I value in terms of affecting how I think their teams are going to perform against other teams. And you were asking about Shatsy. So they have numbers where and I'm guessing from everything they've said and everything explained, everything I've seen from them, where they look at similar teams and similar players in history and try to recreate what the line would be using those ratings and using that methodology and those models. And sometimes those come up with lines that are similar to market, and sometimes those lines come up with lines that are off market, shall we say. And last year when their lines, and last year when their lines were off market, the market was accurate and they were wrong. And actually, let me see if I can give you a pretty good value from a good example from something that doesn't necessarily apply directly, but tennis. There's a guy by the name of Ferrer, David Ferrer. He's a tennis player, and they were talking about tennis ELO on I think 538 earlier this week, and they were talking about Serena Williams. So tennis ELO doesn't work. This is something I've known for a while just because I looked at it years ago and so it was predictive and it wasn't. But if you were to have a guy like David Ferrer, who you could have his ELO rating, but his ELO rating is always going to be wrong in terms of what it predicts for any given match. If he's playing someone worse than him, ELO would tell you to bet on his opponent. And you're going to lose a lot of money doing that because he is very, very good at beating people who don't have a weapon that could put him away. But when he plays against the top players, the players who have the weapons that he can't necessarily handle, well, he doesn't necessarily have the ability to put them away to win a point offensively. And so he'll generally be on the defensive, and he will win very, very few of his matches against Djokovic, Murray, Federer, Nadal when Nadal was still Nadal. I think occasionally, although I think he's lost almost all of them. And it's one of those things where ELO is not going to give you a good, accurate rating. Well, I think in terms of the NFL, Schatz has a model where when he disagrees with the market, he doesn't know how to fix it. Or his modeling doesn't have a fix for it. He doesn't have the ability to figure out why he differs from the market and figure out whether or not, okay, I know why I disagree with the market. I'm going to bet anyway. Or I know I disagree with the market and I'm wrong. And there's something called Chesterton's fence. If anyone's listening to this thing, Google it. Chesterton's fence refers to a situation where there's a fence in the middle of nowhere, and someone comes up and says to a guy who's by the fence, "This fence is pointless. I want to get rid of it." And the person there says, "Well, do you know why the fence is here?" And the guy says, "No." Well, and so the first person says, "Well, until you can tell me why this fence is here and what role it plays, I will not permit you to remove it." Aaron Schatz doesn't necessarily know why his numbers differ from the NFL, and until he does, I wouldn't necessarily recommend wagering on them. Mind you, he apparently, and they say that they were very successful in the years previous, in 2013, 2012, 2011. Maybe they were. I don't know. I didn't Kelly track them those years. But the year I did track them, they got absolutely destroyed in terms of over-unders and similarly destroyed in week-to-week betting. So okay. I don't know. I don't necessarily know if they know why Chesterton's fence is there and stopping them from making money in wagering.
Okay. The last question I think here was from former _ junior asking how to marry upcoming game theory with past statistical performance. I don't know if that was more of a question or more of a comment to Necessary Papers comment.
I was wondering if they were talking about in terms of the next man up idea of the players. Sometimes you have a different team taking the field because certain guys are gone, not available, or whatever else. And so, do you think he was asking about that, or do you think he was asking about something else?
I don't. That's a good question. I guess we could skip it, and maybe if he wants to tweet more about it and expand on it.
So, just read that question again one more time. I want to.
Yeah, I don't know if it was more of a question. It seemed like how to marry upcoming game theory with past statistical performance. Question mark.
I guess the only answer to that the answer that I would offer is try to build a Bayesian model where you have good predictive results. I'm not sure what else to say there. You're basically trying to look for information that would be predictive, trying to figure out how good these teams are and how a game would play out. It's traditional modeling. How good are your predictions? And that applies to things beyond sports. It applies to any model. It applies to any scientific model. That's where we developed the scientific method. So I try to use a scientific method. I try to test everything and try to see, okay, do I have good values for these things? Are my predictions rational? If I disagree with the NFL lines by a large amount, do I know why I do so? And if I do, and I'm okay with that, then maybe I will share my opinion with the market.
Okay. All right. Well, before I let you go, I'm just gonna do some odds and ends here. I know there were some people last year that did my super contest, my version of the super contest, and obviously I'm not doing it this year with all the stuff going on. So I am promoting my buddy's contest. He wanted me to give it a little plug here. It's a double elimination pool. It's $12. You can't pick the same team back-to-back weeks, and I believe if you make it to the playoffs, I think you could pick the same team as long as you want. But I might need a little bit of clarification on that. And I'll send out the link for that, but his email address for that is doubleepool@yahoo.com. So if you guys are looking for like a last-minute contest, just let me know, because I'm not doing one this year, and I figured I would at least give degenerates a chance to do something else here. So, Seth, any final thoughts before we close this up?
Yeah, one quick one. For someone who wants to bet on not just football, bet on anything, there's a book called Naked Economics by Charles Whelan. Really, really good book. It'll give you a good background in both statistical analysis and market theory. And sports betting markets are markets. Think of them as markets first and sports analysis second, and you're off to at least a decent start. So that's my final thought.
Okay. Well, Seth, I really appreciate your time. I hope you guys enjoyed this, despite the technical difficulties. This is the second time I've tried the live podcast, and this is definitely the longest of the two that I've tried. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Seth, thanks for joining.
Let's go Jets.
Enjoy the upcoming football season. Go Jets. Go anything cat related, and go football.
Absolutely. So, congratulations on your wedding, by the way.
Thank you, Seth, and thank you everyone who has tuned in. And I will post this as an MP3. Might not be tonight, but I'll try to get to it tonight. If not, then I'll post it tomorrow. Everyone, have a good night, and I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you then.